The morning sun cast long shadows across the research station on Kepler 442c when the attack came. 7-year-old Maya Chun was feeding the small lizard-like creatures in the biology lab when the first explosions shook the building. Her parents, Dr. James Chun and Dr. Lisa Chun, were in the main laboratory studying plant samples when the pirates struck. Maya dropped the food container and ran to the window. Strange ships with red markings were landing near the station. People in dark armor jumped out carrying massive weapons. Somewhere in the building, she heard her mother screaming her name. "Maya! Maya! Where are you?" The little girl wanted to run to her parents, but the hallway was filled with smoke and terrifying noises. She could hear people shouting and running. Someone was crying. The sharp smell of burning metal and chemicals filled the air. A loud crash echoed from the main lab. Maya pressed herself against the wall, too frightened to move. Through the smoke, she saw one of the armored figures walking down the hallway. His face was hidden behind a metal mask, and he carried a weapon humming with electricity. "Search every room," the figure growled. "The company wants all research data. Any survivors go to the slave markets." Maya's heart pounded so hard it hurt. She had heard stories about slave markets from older children at the station. Terrible stories. She knew she had to hide. She had to escape. The biology lab had a back door leading into the forest. Maya had explored those woods many times with her parents, though they always stayed close to the station. Now the forest felt like the only safe place left. She crawled beneath the lab tables, trying not to make a sound. The back door was only a few steps away. Behind her, the armored man's heavy boots echoed loudly against the metal floor as he moved closer. Maya reached the door and slowly pushed it open. Cool forest air touched her face. She looked back one last time, hoping to see her parents. Instead, there was only smoke, fire, and the sound of people screaming. Then she ran into the trees. The forest felt completely different from how she remembered it. The trees seemed taller and darker, their twisted branches blocking out the sunlight. Strange sounds surrounded her. Clicking noises, soft whistles, and rustling leaves. Maya had never been alone in the forest before, and fear followed her with every step. She kept running until her legs burned and her chest ached. When she finally stopped, the explosions from the station still echoed faintly in the distance, though much farther away now. She sat beside a giant tree with deep purple bark and began to cry. Maya did not know she was being watched. Hidden among the branches above her, several creatures observed the small human child. They had never seen a human this close before. They only knew the stories. Stories about tall, dangerous beings who arrived from the stars and took whatever they wanted. But this one was tiny, frightened, and completely alone. The creatures resembled large foxes, except they had 6 legs instead of 4. Their fur looked like living crystal, constantly shifting colors in the light. At that moment, their fur shimmered with deep blues and purples, the colors of fear and concern. The largest among them, an elder named Shimmer of Dawn, watched Maya carefully. Shimmer of Dawn was old enough to remember the arrival of the first humans on their world. The stories spoke of violence and destruction. Humans were said to be dangerous creatures. Yet this child looked helpless. "She is only a youngster," whispered another creature. A younger adult named Bright Tail. "Look how small she is. Humans are dangerous," a third voice warned. "The stories say they destroy everything they touch." Shimmer of Dawn's crystalline fur slowly shifted to silver, the color of deep thought. "But she is a child," she replied softly. "All children deserve protection, no matter what species they belong to." The sounds of explosions from the station grew louder. Thick smoke climbed into the sky above the trees. Maya looked up at the dark clouds and cried even harder. "Those are not her people making those sounds," Bright Tail said quietly. "Those are the raiders we have heard about." At that moment, Shimmer of Dawn made a decision that would change everything. She climbed gracefully down the tree, her 6 legs moving silently across the purple bark. The others followed, though they stayed cautious and ready to flee if the human child proved dangerous. Maya looked up when she heard a soft musical sound, like crystal wind chimes swaying in the breeze. Standing before her was the most beautiful creature she had ever seen. It was as large as a big dog, with sparkling fur that shimmered like jewels and gentle eyes glowing with warm light. "Hello, little one," Shimmer of Dawn said in her own language, a voice that sounded almost like singing. Maya could not understand the words, but the tone was kind and comforting. Slowly, she stopped crying and stared at the incredible creature in front of her. More of the fox-like beings stepped out from behind trees and bushes. Maya counted 6 of them, including a few smaller ones that looked like children her own age. Their crystal fur now glowed with soft greens and warm yellows, colors that somehow made Maya feel safe. Bright Tail stepped forward. Though younger than Shimmer of Dawn, he was still much larger than Maya. His fur shimmered gold with streaks of silver. He made a series of soft musical sounds and carefully held out one paw. Maya hesitated. Her parents had always warned her to be careful around wild animals. But these creatures did not seem wild at all. They seemed intelligent and gentle. Slowly, she reached out and touched Bright Tail's paw. His fur felt warm and slightly tingly, like touching soft static electricity. Bright Tail's colors immediately shifted into bright pink and orange, the colors of happiness. "The bad ones are coming," Shimmer of Dawn warned in their musical language. "We must take her deep into the forest, to the hidden places." The Theity, as they called themselves, had many secret shelters hidden within their ancient forest home. The Theity knew every tree, every stream, and every hidden cave within the forest. They had lived on this world for thousands of years, long before humans ever arrived. Shimmer of Dawn gently lifted Maya in her mouth, carrying her the way a mother cat carries her kitten. Maya was frightened at first, but the elder's grip was warm and careful, making sure not to hurt the little girl. The group moved silently through the forest like flowing water. They followed hidden paths invisible to outsiders, slipping through thick bushes and over fallen trees in ways the pirates could never track. As Shimmer of Dawn carried her deeper into the woods, Maya almost felt as if she were flying. Eventually, they stopped at a place where several enormous trees grew close together, their tangled roots forming natural hiding spaces. Long ago, the Theity had transformed the area into a shelter by weaving branches into walls and lining the ground with soft moss beds. Shimmer of Dawn carefully placed Maya onto a bed of silver moss. The little girl looked around in amazement. The shelter seemed like something from a fairy tale, with living wooden walls and a leafy ceiling that allowed just enough sunlight to shine through. "Water," Bright Tail said. Maya recognized the word immediately. He carried over a large leaf filled with clear water from a nearby stream. Maya drank gratefully, realizing how thirsty she was after all the running and crying. One of the youngest Theity, only slightly bigger than Maya herself, approached shyly. Her fur was pale blue with tiny white spots, and her large eyes were filled with curiosity. She tilted her head and made soft questioning sounds. "That is Gentle Song," Bright Tail explained, though Maya could not fully understand his words yet. He was slowly learning human speech by listening carefully to the sounds Maya made. "She wants to know if you are hurt." Maya shook her head and gave a small smile. Gentle Song's fur brightened into cheerful yellow, and she curled up beside Maya like a warm, living pillow. Over the next several hours, the Theity took turns watching for danger, while others searched for food for their unexpected guest. They brought Maya sweet fruits and nuts, carefully testing everything first to make sure it was safe for humans to eat. Bright Tail remembered seeing human scientists eat similar foods before. As the day passed, Maya slowly began to feel safer. The Theity were gentle, patient, and kind. They understood she was frightened and alone. Whenever Maya started crying again while thinking about her parents, Gentle Song would softly nuzzle her with a warm snout. That night, the Theity stood guard while Maya slept curled up between Gentle Song and another young Theity. Their crystal fur gave off warmth, and the sound of their soft breathing helped her feel less alone. But the pirates had not stopped searching. Over the following days, search parties spread throughout the forest looking for survivors from the research station. The Theity could hear them crashing through the woods, shouting to one another while machines scanned for signs of life. The Theity were peaceful by nature. They had never fought wars or intentionally harmed another living creature, but that did not make them helpless. No one knew the forest better than they did, and they possessed abilities the pirates never expected. Whenever search parties came too close to their hiding places, the Theody used natural camouflage to become nearly invisible. Their crystal fur perfectly copied the colors of the surrounding forest. They could also communicate with the animals around them. Birds were guided to make noise in the wrong directions, while small mammals darted across pirate paths to confuse their scanners. Brighttail became especially skilled at distracting the searchers. He would briefly reveal himself just long enough to catch their attention before vanishing into thick undergrowth or climbing narrow trees humans could not follow. The pirates never saw him clearly, but they wasted countless hours chasing shadows through the forest. "What kind of creatures live on this planet?" one frustrated pirate asked after stumbling through the woods for the third straight day. "Nothing dangerous according to the files," his partner answered. "Just some fox-like animals. Probably frightened wildlife running around." The pirates had no idea they were being deliberately misled by some of the most intelligent beings on the planet. Meanwhile, Maya slowly learned how to communicate with her protectors. She still could not speak the Theody musical language, but she began recognizing simple words and expressions. Brighttail also continued learning human speech. One of the first human phrases he mastered was "thank you," mainly because Maya said it so often. The younger Theody taught Maya their names by pointing to themselves and singing their unique name songs. Shimmer of Dawn's song sounded like sunlight dancing across water. Brighttail's melody reminded Maya of wind moving through golden leaves. Gentle Song's name sounded soft and comforting, almost like a lullaby. Maya tried singing her own name the way they did, but human voices could not create the same crystal-like harmonies. So the Theody created a special song for her instead. To them, her song meant, "small bright spirit." Hearing it made Maya feel accepted. After 2 weeks, the pirates grew angry and desperate. They had found no survivors and recovered little of value from the destroyed station. Their leader finally decided to force anyone hiding out into the open. The search parties began setting fires throughout the forest. Maya and the Theody smelled the smoke long before they saw the flames. Shimmer of Dawn's fur turned deep red with alarm as she realized what was happening. "They are burning the forest," she warned the others in their musical language. "We must move to the stone caves near the great waterfall." The caves were far away, and reaching them would be dangerous with pirates still searching the woods. But the fires spread quickly, and soon their shelter would no longer be safe. The Theody gathered what little they could carry and prepared to leave. Maya could see their fear in the dark shifting colors of their fur. She wished she could help somehow, but she was only a small child in a world that suddenly felt far too dangerous. The journey to the caves lasted through the entire night. The Theody moved carefully, avoiding both the spreading fires and the pirate patrols. Several times, they hid silently inside thick bushes while armed raiders passed nearby. Maya quickly learned how important silence was. One careless sound could place all of them in danger. When they finally reached the stone caves, Maya was exhausted. The caves felt dark and cold compared to the warm tree shelter, but they were safe from the flames. Shimmer of Dawn assured her they would only stay there until the danger passed. But on the third day inside the caves, disaster struck. A group of pirates fleeing one of the fires they had accidentally started wandered into the cave system. Angry, exhausted, and armed, they searched for another way out. Maya had been sleeping when Brighttail's urgent warning song jolted her awake. The adult Theody moved quickly, trying to hide every sign that someone had been living there, but there was not enough time. The pirates entered the main cave just as Shimmer of Dawn tried to hide Maya behind a large rock formation. One armored figure noticed movement immediately and raised his weapon. "Something's in here," he shouted. "Probably just animals, but check it out." At that moment, Shimmer of Dawn revealed the true courage of her people. Instead of fleeing, she stepped directly between Maya and the armed pirates. Her crystal fur blazed silver and gold, the colors of protection and fierce determination. The pirates froze in surprise. They had never seen anything like the Theody before. "What is that thing?" one muttered nervously while lifting his weapon. Some kind of local animal, another answered. Shoot it and keep moving. But before anyone could fire, Bright Tail and the other adult theity emerged from the shadows, surrounding Maya and Shimmer of Dawn in a protective circle. Their fur burned with warning colors, deep crimson and blazing orange, making their intentions unmistakably clear. They would fight to protect the human child. For the first time since arriving on the planet, the pirates hesitated. These creatures were clearly intelligent, and they were protecting something important. The lead pirate stepped forward, trying to see what the creatures were protecting. That was when Maya made her own brave choice. She stepped out from behind Shimmer of Dawn and looked directly at the armored figures. "Please don't hurt them," she said in her small but steady voice. "They saved me. They're good." The pirates stared at her in shock. They had spent weeks searching for survivors, and now they were looking at a human child being protected by alien creatures. Well, the leader said, lowering his weapon slightly. "Looks like we finally found something valuable. The slavers will pay a fortune for a human child this young." But the pirates had made one terrible mistake. They had underestimated both the intelligence and the determination of the theity. As the pirate leader reached toward Maya, Shimmer of Dawn did something completely against the peaceful instincts of her people. She attacked. The elder was not a warrior, but she would do anything to protect the child who had become part of her family. Shimmer of Dawn leaped forward with astonishing speed. Her crystal fur blazed like living fire as her 6 powerful legs carried her straight into the armored pirate. The man had no time to react. He crashed backward onto the cave floor, his weapon flying from his hands. Shimmer of Dawn landed on top of him, pinning him down beneath her weight. Her fur burned with pure white light, a color the theity showed only during the most extreme moments of fear and determination. The other pirates immediately raised their weapons, but Bright Tail and the remaining adults were already moving. Bright Tail darted between the pirates with incredible speed, weaving through their legs and throwing them off balance. The other theity created chaos by knocking over equipment and releasing loud warning calls that echoed throughout the cave system. In the confusion, Maya ran deeper into the tunnels, following the hidden paths the theity had shown her before. She knew the pirates would chase her, but she also knew Shimmer of Dawn and the others would never stop protecting her, even if it placed them in terrible danger. The chase through the caves felt endless. Maya's small size allowed her to squeeze through narrow passages that slowed the heavily armored pirates behind her. Farther back, she could hear the theity fighting in their own way, not with violence, but with intelligence and courage, using their knowledge of the caves to protect one another. Finally, Maya reached a narrow opening so tight that only she could fit through it. She crawled inside and emerged into a small hidden chamber illuminated by glowing crystal formations. The room shimmered with soft blue and silver light, making it feel peaceful and strangely magical. For the first time in hours, Maya felt safe. A few moments later, Bright Tail squeezed through the narrow opening behind her. His golden fur had dimmed with exhaustion, but relief shone brightly in his eyes. "Safe now, small bright spirit," he said in broken human words. "Bad ones cannot follow." One by one, the other theity entered the crystal chamber. They were frightened and exhausted, but alive. Maya hugged each of them, trying to show how grateful she was for everything they had done. But when Shimmer of Dawn finally crawled into the chamber, Maya immediately saw that something was wrong. The elder was badly injured. Part of her beautiful crystal fur had been burned black, and every movement seemed painful. "You got hurt because of me?" Maya whispered sadly as she gently touched the injured side. Shimmer of Dawn's fur softened into shades of pink and gold, the colors of love, comfort, and family. The elder gently nuzzled Maya and sang a quiet song that needed no translation. She was telling Maya that protecting her had been worth any cost. That night, deep inside the crystal chamber, the deity cared for their injured elder while Maya sat quietly beside Gentle Song, listening to Bright Tail's soft melodies echo through the glowing cave. Maya understood something important now. These incredible beings had risked everything to keep her safe. And she was no longer simply a lost human child. She had become part of a theity family, and they had become part of hers. Outside the caves, The pirates eventually abandoned their search and returned to their ships. The fires slowly burned out, leaving scars across the forest that would heal with time. The research station was gone. But the most important thing of all, a small human life, had survived because of the courage and kindness of strangers who had expected nothing in return. That night, Maya fell asleep between her alien protectors, unaware that their simple act of compassion would one day change the entire galaxy. All she knew was that she was safe, surrounded by friends who would protect her no matter what dangers came. The glowing crystals lit the chamber softly throughout the night while the Theody took turns standing guard. Their fur shimmered with the peaceful colors of family, love, and hope. Maya-chan, 7 years old and far from home, slept peacefully beneath the protection of the bravest beings she had ever known. 3 months passed after the pirate attack before the UES Determination emerged from hyperspace near Kepler 442c. Captain Sarah Rodriguez stood on the bridge, staring down at the silent planet below. The research station's emergency beacon had transmitted distress signals for weeks before the colonial fleet finally arrived. "Any signs of life down there?" Captain Rodriguez asked. "The station appears completely destroyed, Captain," Lieutenant Chun replied while studying the sensor readings. "But I'm detecting unusual energy signatures in the forest regions. Possible survivors." Captain Rodriguez nodded grimly. Pirate attacks on isolated research stations had become increasingly common, and survivors were rare. The Crimson Fleet was infamous for capturing people and selling them into slavery. "Prepare a landing party," she ordered. "Full medical support and armed security. If anyone survived 3 months in that wilderness, they'll need help." Dr. Elena Vasquez, the expedition's xenopsychologist, joined the landing team moments before departure. She had studied every known species in the sector, but the strange energy readings coming from the planet did not match anything in the official records. "Captain," she said while boarding the shuttle, "those energy patterns are not from human technology. You think there's intelligent native life down there?" Rodriguez asked. "Possibly," Dr. Vasquez answered. "The signals are extremely complex. They almost resemble communication patterns." The shuttle landed beside the burned remains of the research station. The landing team spread out carefully, scanning the twisted metal and ashes for signs of life. Beyond the ruins, the forest looked dark and mysterious, filled with towering purple trees and unfamiliar sounds. "Over here," Sergeant Martinez called from the forest edge. "I've got movement in the trees." The team advanced cautiously, weapons lowered but ready. Then they heard something that made every person stop in amazement. A human voice, singing. "That sounds like a child," Dr. Vasquez whispered. The singing drifted through the forest alongside other sounds that were definitely not human. Soft musical tones like crystal wind chimes blending perfectly with the child's voice in a way that sounded beautiful and almost unreal. "Maya," Captain Rodriguez called while checking the station records. "Maya-chan, can you hear me?" The singing suddenly stopped. For a long moment, the forest was silent. Then bushes rustled nearby. What stepped into the clearing left the entire landing party speechless. A small human girl, no older than 7 or 8, slowly emerged from the trees. Her clothes were torn and patched with woven grass and leaves, yet she looked healthy, calm, and completely unafraid. Tiny crystals decorated her hair, catching the sunlight as she moved. But she was not alone. Walking behind her came 6 of the most beautiful creatures the humans had ever seen. They resembled large 6-legged foxes, but their fur looked like living crystal, constantly shifting colors as they moved through the light. The largest among them, clearly an elder, had silver and gold fur marked with elegant glowing patterns. Beside Maya stood a younger creature with bright golden fur who stayed protectively close to her side. "Hello," Maya said in perfect standard human, though her voice now carried a faint musical rhythm. "Are you here to help? These are my friends. They saved me." Slowly, Captain Rodriguez lowered her weapon completely and knelt to Maya's level. "I'm Captain Rodriguez of the Colonial Fleet," she said gently. "Are you Maya-chan?" "Yes," Maya replied. "These are the Theody. They protected me when the bad people came." She pointed toward the crystal-furred beings standing beside her. "This is Shimmer of Dawn," she explained, indicating the elder. "And this is Bright Tail. He's learning human words." At the sound of his name, the golden-furred deity stepped forward and made a careful attempt at human speech. "Hello," Bright Tail said slowly, his voice carrying the same soft musical quality that Maya's speech had begun to develop. "Maya safe. We protect." Dr. Vasquez felt her heart skip a beat. This was first contact with an intelligent alien species, and it was happening because they had chosen to protect a human child. "Maya," Captain Rodriguez asked gently, "what happened to your parents?" Maya's expression fell. "I don't know," she answered quietly. "The pirates took everyone away. I ran into the forest, and the deity found me. They've been taking care of me ever since." Sensing Maya's sadness, Shimmer of Dawn stepped closer and gently nuzzled the little girl. Her crystal fur shifted into soft shades of blue and green, colors that somehow conveyed comfort and affection even without words. "How long have you been living with them?" Dr. Vasquez asked, her scientific curiosity racing. "About 3 months, I think," Maya replied. "They taught me their language, and I taught them some human words." She smiled faintly. "They're very smart. They know everything about the forest and the animals. They saved me from the fires." "Fires?" Sergeant Martinez asked while glancing at the blackened scars covering nearby trees. "The pirates started burning the forest when they couldn't find me," Maya explained. "Shimmer of Dawn got hurt protecting me." She gently touched the elder's side where patches of crystal fur had grown back in slightly different colors, marking old injuries. Captain Rodriguez felt a chill. These beings had risked their lives for a child they had never met. "Maya," she said carefully, "we need to take you somewhere safe, somewhere with other humans." Maya immediately looked worried and turned toward the deity, speaking to them in their musical language. What followed left the humans speechless. Maya's voice had learned to mimic the crystal-like harmonies of the alien language, blending naturally with the songs of the deity. It was obvious she was no longer simply communicating with them. She belonged with them. Bright Tail responded with a long, emotional melody filled with layered harmonies. The others joined in one by one until the clearing was filled with music so beautiful it brought tears to Dr. Vasquez's eyes. "What are they saying?" Captain Rodriguez asked softly. "They want to make sure I'll be safe," Maya translated. "They don't want to lose me, but they understand I need to be with my own kind." She wiped her eyes. "Bright Tail says he'll miss teaching me forest songs." The youngest deity, barely larger than Maya herself, slowly approached and rubbed against the little girl's legs. Her pale blue fur and large eyes carried obvious sadness. "This is Gentle Song," Maya explained while hugging the young alien tightly. "She's like my little sister now." Dr. Vasquez carefully stepped forward, making sure not to frighten the aliens. "Maya," she said gently, "can you tell them we mean no harm? Tell them we're grateful for what they did." Maya translated the message. The reaction from the deity was immediate. Their fur brightened into warm shades of gold and pink, and soft musical tones filled the air like welcoming chimes. "They say any friend of mine is their friend too," Maya explained. "Shimmer of Dawn wants to know if you'll hurt the forest." "Tell them we only want to help," Captain Rodriguez replied firmly. "We want to understand them and learn from them." As Maya translated, Dr. Vasquez quickly activated her recording equipment. This was the most important first contact in human history, and every second needed to be preserved. "Maya," Dr. Vasquez said carefully, "can you ask them about their people, their society and culture?" What followed became the most remarkable interview of Dr. Vasquez's career. Speaking through Maya, the deity revealed an ancient and deeply sophisticated civilization. They had lived on the planet for thousands of years, developing rich philosophies and complex social traditions without ever building advanced technology. They lived in family groups called pods, guided by elders like Shimmer of Dawn. Their oral histories stretched back more than 50 generations. They held seasonal ceremonies tied to the rhythms of nature and possessed an incredibly detailed understanding of their planet's ecosystem. "They don't build cities or machines," Maya explained. They say they don't need to change the world because the world is already perfect. They only need to learn how to live in harmony with it. Dr. Vasquez exchanged a stunned look with Captain Rodriguez. Ask them why they saved you, the doctor requested quietly, though she already suspected the answer. Maya sang the question in the Theody language. Shimmer of Dawn responded with a long and beautiful melody filled with emotions so deep that even the humans could feel them without understanding the words. She says all young ones deserve protection, Maya translated softly, no matter what species they belong to. Maya smiled through tears. She says they sensed my bright spirit song and knew I was good. She says protecting children is the greatest responsibility of any intelligent being. Captain Rodriguez felt a lump form in her throat. These beings had risked everything for a human child simply because it was morally right. They want to know something else, Maya continued. They want to know if all humans are like the pirates who hurt the forest. Tell them no, Captain Rodriguez answered immediately. Tell them the pirates are criminals. Most humans try to be good, just like they are. The response was immediate. Relieved musical harmonies echoed through the clearing, while the Theodies first shifted into bright, joyful colors. Maya, Dr. Vasquez said gently, we need to bring you back to our ship. You need medical care, and there are people who have been worried about you for a very long time. Maya looked torn. She clearly wanted to return with the humans, but the thought of leaving the Theody broke her heart. Bright Tail seemed to understand exactly how she felt. He stepped closer and began singing a slow, emotional song filled with both sadness and warmth. When the melody ended, Maya was crying. What did he say? Captain Rodriguez asked quietly. He said young birds have to leave the nest when they're ready to fly, Maya whispered. He said I'm ready to return to my own flock, but I'll always have a place in their pod. Her voice trembled. He said he'll miss me every day. Dr. Vasquez suddenly made a decision that would change everything. Maya, she said carefully, ask Bright Tail if he would like to come with us for a little while, just until we know you're safe. Maya's face lit up with excitement as she translated the offer. Bright Tail's reaction was immediate. His fur exploded into brilliant gold and silver colors filled with excitement and wonder. He says yes. Maya laughed happily. He says he wants to see the sky nest where humans live. And so, 1 hour later, the shuttle lifted off from Kepler 442c carrying the most unusual passengers in colonial fleet history. Maya-chan sat beside Bright Tail, teaching him the names of the stars visible through the shuttle viewport. The young Theody's crystal fur reflected the starlight, filling the cabin with shifting rainbow patterns that danced across the walls. By the time they arrived aboard the UES Determination, news of their passengers had already spread throughout the ship. Crew members lined the corridors hoping to catch a glimpse of the alien who had protected a human child. Bright Tail absorbed everything with wide, curious eyes while his fur constantly shifted with amazement and wonder. Captain Rodriguez arranged private quarters for Maya, with Bright Tail receiving a room directly beside hers. The ship's doctor performed a full medical examination on Maya and was astonished by the results. These beings clearly understand how to care for a human child, Dr. Martinez reported afterward. She shows no signs of malnutrition, disease, or psychological trauma. In fact, she appears remarkably healthy and emotionally stable. That evening, Maya and Bright Tail participated in their first formal interview with Dr. Vasquez. The xenopsychologist was stunned by everything she learned. The Theody possess an incredibly advanced understanding of emotions and relationships, she later explained to Captain Rodriguez. They communicate not only through language, but through fur coloration, tone, rhythm, and emotional harmonics. She continued reviewing her notes. Maya has learned to interpret these signals naturally, and the Theody have learned to understand human facial expressions and body language just as effectively. What about their intelligence level? Captain Rodriguez asked. Dr. Vasquez looked genuinely amazed. Extraordinary, she answered. They may not possess technology, but socially and philosophically they are far beyond most pre-industrial civilizations we've encountered. She paused for a moment. They possess highly sophisticated concepts of ethics, justice, empathy, and moral responsibility. Dr. Vasquez paused as she studied her notes carefully. Captain, the Theody saved Maya without expecting anything in return, she said quietly. Their moral code demanded it. They risked their lives for a member of a completely unknown species simply because she was a child who needed protection. Meanwhile, inside Maya's quarters, she was teaching Brighttail about human technology. The young Theody was fascinated by everything around him. The lights that activated with a switch, food that came from machines, and the massive windows that revealed endless stars outside the ship. Your people are very clever, Brighttail said in slowly improving human speech. But do you ever miss simple things? The sound of wind through leaves, the feeling of earth beneath your feet. Maya thought about the question seriously. Sometimes, she admitted. But we build ships like this so we can explore and meet new friends. Like meeting you and your family. Brighttail's fur shifted warmly into shades of pink and gold. Meeting you changed us too, small bright spirit, he replied softly. We learned that beings can become family even when they are different species. 3 days later, the UES Determination arrived at the nearest human colony world. Captain Rodriguez had remained in constant communication with Colonial Command, and by then the story of Maya and the Theody had already spread throughout human space. Footage of Maya reuniting with her crystal-furred protectors had been broadcast across countless worlds. The image of a small human child embracing creatures that looked like living jewels captured the hearts of billions. One morning, Captain Rodriguez received a priority transmission from Colonial Command. You are ordered to return to Earth immediately with both the child and the alien representative. This situation is now classified as Priority 1 First Contact. As preparations began for the journey to Earth, Maya spent hours recording messages for the Theody still living on Kepler 442c. Brighttail helped translate difficult human concepts into the musical language of his people. Tell Shimmer of Dawn that human doctors want to help heal her burns, Maya said softly into the recorder. Tell Gentle Song that I'll send her pictures of Earth. Tell everyone I'll never forget them. Brighttail translated her words into a beautiful song filled with emotion, carrying Maya's love and gratitude across the stars. On the final night before reaching Earth, Maya and Brighttail sat together in the ship's observation lounge, staring out at the endless sea of stars. Several crew members gathered nearby, listening quietly as the pair shared stories about life inside the forests of Kepler 442c. Do you think humans and the Theody can stay friends forever? Maya asked. Brighttail considered the question carefully while his fur shifted through thoughtful shades of silver and blue. I think, he answered slowly, that when two species learn to love each other's children, they become more than friends. His colors warmed gently. They become family. Dr. Vasquez, quietly recording the conversation nearby, felt tears gather in her eyes. She was beginning to understand something extraordinary. This first contact was unlike anything in human history. It was not built on trade agreements, military alliances, or territorial negotiations. It was built on compassion, sacrifice, and the shared belief that protecting children was the highest responsibility of any intelligent species. As Earth slowly grew larger on the observation screen, Maya eventually fell asleep against Brighttail's warm crystal fur. The young Theody remained awake beside her, his shifting colors glowing softly with the patterns that represented protection, comfort, and family love. From across the lounge, Captain Rodriguez watched them quietly and realized that history was about to change forever. Once humanity learned the full story of what the Theody had done for one small child, nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The ship's communications officer approached carefully. Captain, we're receiving hundreds of messages from Earth. News agencies, government officials, xenobiologists. Everyone wants interviews with the child and the alien. Captain Rodriguez nodded calmly. Put them all on hold, she replied. Maya and Brighttail have already been through enough. When we land, they'll tell their story when they're ready. Not before. She looked once more at the sleeping child and her alien protector. In that moment, Captain Rodriguez silently promised herself something important. Humanity owed the Theody a debt that could never truly be repaid. Whatever happened next, she would make certain that debt was honored. Beyond the observation windows, the stars drifted silently past as the UES Determination carried its precious passengers toward Earth. In only a few days, Maya-chan and Brighttail would stand before the most powerful leaders in human civilization and share their story. It was a story that would reshape history, launch fleets across the stars, and remind humanity what it truly meant to protect those who could not protect themselves. But for now, it remained something simpler. The story of a little girl and the crystal-furred beings who loved her enough to risk everything for her safety. And during the quiet stillness of the ship's night cycle, that was enough. The United Nations headquarters on Earth had never witnessed anything like it. Reporters from every major news network crowded the massive plaza outside the building, while inside, delegates from across human space gathered for what many were already calling the most important UN session in history. Maya-chan, now 8 years old, sat quietly inside a witness preparation room with Brighttail beside her. The young Theody's crystal fur shimmered with nervous shades of silver and blue as he tried to process the enormous amount of activity surrounding them. "There are so many humans," Brighttail said in much more confident human speech. "More than all the trees in our forest." Maya smiled and gently touched his paw. "They just want to hear our story," she assured him. "They want to learn about your people." The door opened, and Dr. Elena Vasquez entered carrying a tablet full of notes. During the month since arriving on Earth, she had become both Maya and Brighttail's strongest advocate, protecting them from the overwhelming attention surrounding the historic first contact. "Are you ready?" she asked gently. "Just tell the truth about what happened. Let them see how brave and kind the Theody really are." Maya nodded, though nervous butterflies fluttered inside her stomach. Brighttail's fur shifted into warm shades of gold and pink, the colors that meant he was trying to be brave for Maya's sake. Inside the massive assembly hall, Secretary General Amara Okafor called the emergency session to order. The enormous chamber was filled with delegates, scientists, military officers, corporate representatives, and diplomats from every corner of human space. Huge holographic displays projected the meeting live across every human colony in the galaxy. "We gather today to hear testimony regarding humanity's first contact with a newly discovered intelligent species," Secretary General Okafor announced. "This contact is unique because it did not begin with diplomacy or negotiation, but with an extraordinary act of courage and compassion." Maya's parents, Dr. James Chun and Dr. Lisa Chun, were called to testify first. They had been rescued from a pirate slave vessel 3 weeks after Maya disappeared and had spent every moment since desperately searching for their daughter. "Our daughter was only 7 years old when the pirates attacked," Dr. Lisa Chun said, her voice trembling with emotion. "We believed we had lost her forever." She paused, wiping tears from her eyes. "Then we learned that she had survived because an alien species we never even knew existed chose to protect her." Her voice broke slightly. "The Theody saved our daughter's life. More than that, they loved her. They welcomed her into their family. There are no words strong enough to express our gratitude." Dr. James Chun stepped forward next. "I have spent my entire career studying alien ecosystems and life forms," he said, "but I have never encountered a species capable of such completely selfless kindness. The Theody protected Maya for 3 months without asking for anything in return. They shared their food, risked their lives, and cared for her as though she were their own child." Next came Captain Sarah Rodriguez, who described the rescue operation and humanity's first direct encounter with the Theody. "When we found Maya," she explained, "she was healthy, emotionally stable, and completely surrounded by alien protectors who had clearly devoted themselves to her safety and happiness. The Theody showed no fear of our weapons and no concern for their own safety. Their only concern was Maya's well-being. When we suggested bringing Brighttail aboard our ship so Maya would feel safe during the transition back to human society, he agreed immediately despite never having left his homeworld before. Then Admiral Marcus Thompson, commander of the colonial fleet, addressed the assembly. "The Theody homeworld, Kepler 442c, lies within a region rich in rare minerals and significant strategic value," he explained. Several corporations have already filed development claims on the system. He paused grimly. Our intelligence also confirms that the hegemony has begun scouting the area. At the mention of the hegemony, uneasy murmurs spread throughout the chamber. Humanity's greatest rival was infamous for aggressive expansion and brutal treatment of less advanced civilizations. If we fail to act, Admiral Thompson continued, the Theody will almost certainly face enslavement, exploitation, or extinction, either by corporate interests or by hegemony conquest. He looked around the chamber carefully. These beings saved a human child. We cannot abandon them now. But not everyone agreed. Representative Marcus Steele of the Terran Corporate Alliance stood to speak. While this story is certainly emotional, Steele began, we must consider practical realities. The Theody are a pre-technological species with no obvious economic or military value. Committing significant fleet resources to protect them would be financially irresponsible. Representative Cheney of the Outer Colonies Coalition nodded in agreement. We already struggle to defend our own colonies from pirates and hostile powers, she added. Can humanity truly afford to become guardians for every vulnerable species we encounter? The debate quickly grew heated. Some delegates argued that protecting the Theody was a moral responsibility. Others insisted humanity could not afford to police the entire galaxy. Then Maya and Brighttail were called to testify. Maya walked slowly toward the witness podium with Brighttail beside her, his 6 graceful legs moving silently across the polished floor. The enormous assembly hall fell completely silent at the sight of the small human girl standing beside her crystal-furred companion. Hello, Maya began, her voice nervous but steady. My name is Maya Chun, and this is my friend Brighttail. I want to tell you about the Theody. For the next hour, Maya described her life among them. She spoke about Shimmer of Dawn standing between her and armed pirates. She spoke about Gentle Song sharing food and warmth with her when she was lonely and afraid. She described how the entire pod had worked together to keep one frightened child alive. They didn't have to help me, Maya said softly. They had never even met a human before. All they knew were scary stories about us. But when they found me alone and crying in the forest, they helped me anyway, because that's who they are. Then Brighttail spoke. His musical voice echoed clearly through the assembly hall. My people have a saying, he said carefully in human speech. The measure of a species is not found in strength or weapons, but in how they treat the helpless. When we found small bright spirit Maya, she was frightened and alone. To abandon her would have meant abandoning our own souls. His fur shifted into deep silver and blue, colors of solemn honesty. We ask nothing from humanity except understanding. We do not seek your wealth or your technology. We only wish to live peacefully within our forest home, as we have for thousands of years. He lowered his head slightly. But if others come to destroy us, we cannot defend ourselves. We are not warriors. The assembly hall remained completely silent. Then Brighttail continued. Maya taught us that humans can be kind. She learned our songs and sang beneath the stars with us. She became our sister in every way except blood. His voice softened. If humanity truly protects its young, then please protect those who protected her. When Maya and Brighttail finished speaking, there was not a dry eye left in the chamber. But despite the emotion, the arguments resumed almost immediately. Corporate leaders debated costs. Military officials debated strategic risks. Political representatives debated jurisdiction and resources. Finally, Dr. Elena Vasquez requested permission to address the assembly. As humanity's leading expert in xenopsychology and alien culture, her opinion carried enormous influence. Honored delegates, she began calmly. During the past month, I have studied Theody culture through direct interaction with Brighttail and long-range communications with his people. What I have learned challenges nearly everything we assume about civilization and intelligence. She activated a holographic display showing newly documented images of Theody society. The Theody possess no armies, no weapons, and no concept of warfare. For over 10,000 years, they have lived in harmony with both their environment and one another. Their social systems are built entirely upon cooperation, empathy, and mutual care. She looked around the chamber carefully. They have achieved something many advanced civilizations, including our own, still struggle to achieve. A truly peaceful society. That is exactly why they are vulnerable, Representative Steele interrupted. They cannot defend themselves, and they offer no strategic value. Dr. Vasquez turned toward him immediately. Representative Steele, she replied firmly. You are wrong on both counts. The Theody possess immense value. Not economic value. Not military value. Moral value. They are living proof that intelligent life does not need to be driven by conquest, greed, violence, or environmental destruction. She gestured toward Maya and Brighttail. They represent what civilized life could become, and their inability to defend themselves is precisely why protecting them matters. If humanity wishes to earn respect among the stars, then we must prove that we protect the innocent, not only those who benefit us. The debate continued for several more hours, but the turning point came when Maya quietly raised her hand again. May I say something else? The 8-year-old asked. Secretary General Okafor nodded gently. Of course, Maya. Maya stepped back toward the podium and looked across the enormous hall. Then she looked directly into the cameras broadcasting her words across human space. I know I'm just a kid, she began softly, but I think I understand what everyone here is really arguing about. Some people think protecting the Theody will cost too much. Some people think they aren't important enough. She reached down and gently held Brighttail's paw. But I want to tell you something Shimmer of Dawn told me on my last night in the forest. Maya's voice grew stronger. She said the true measure of a person or a species is not how they treat people who can help them. It's how they treat those who cannot. The chamber became completely still. The Theody couldn't help me get home, Maya continued. They couldn't give me money or power or technology. All they could give me was love and protection. And they gave it freely, even when it put them in danger. She looked directly into the main broadcast camera. If we don't protect them now, what does that say about us? What does it say about humanity? The whole galaxy is watching to see what humans will do for the people who saved one of our children. For one heartbeat, the assembly hall remained silent. Then the room exploded into applause. Delegates rose to their feet cheering, many openly crying as they applauded the small girl whose words carried more wisdom than generations of politicians. When the applause finally faded, Secretary General Okafor called the assembly back to order. The motion before this council is Resolution 2157, the Guardian Species Declaration, she announced. If passed, the Theody people will be placed under the direct protection of humanity. She looked across the chamber. All in favor? The result was overwhelming. Representatives from across human space voted almost unanimously in support of the resolution. Even several corporate delegates, influenced by Maya's speech and the massive public support spreading throughout human civilization, voted yes. Resolution 2157 is hereby adopted, Secretary General Okafor declared. For the first time in human history, an entire alien species is placed under humanity's protection, not as subjects, colonies, or protectorates, but as honored friends. The Guardian Species Declaration was unlike anything humanity had ever created before. It established the Theody Protection Protocol, assigning a major portion of the colonial fleet to defend the Kepler 442c system. It created the first interspecies cultural exchange program in human history. Most importantly, it declared that any attack against the Theody people would be treated as an attack against humanity itself. Admiral Marcus Thompson was placed in command of the newly formed Guardian fleet, with orders to establish a permanent defense station within the Theody system. Captain Sarah Rodriguez received a promotion to admiral and was assigned responsibility for day-to-day protection operations. Maya Chun was officially appointed as humanity's first cultural ambassador to an alien civilization. Despite her young age, no one alive understood both species better than she did. As the assembly session concluded, Maya and Brighttail were immediately surrounded by reporters, diplomats, and well-wishers. Bright Tail's crystal fur blazed with brilliant gold and pink, the colors of happiness and excitement. "What will you do now?" one reporter asked Maya. "I want to go back to Kepler 442c, Maya answered without hesitation. "I want to see my family again, and I want to help humans and the theity become true friends." "And you, Bright Tail?" another reporter asked. "What do you think about humanity's decision?" Bright Tail answered in the musical language of the theity while Maya translated. "He says today 2 species became one family," Maya explained with a smile. "He says his people will remember this kindness for 10,000 generations." That evening, Maya and Bright Tail attended a celebration dinner held in their honor. Leaders, scientists, diplomats, and military officers from across human space came to meet them personally and hear the story firsthand. But the most meaningful moment came much later, after the formal celebrations ended. For the first time since the rescue, Maya's parents were finally able to spend quiet time alone with Bright Tail. Dr. Lisa Chun looked at the young theity with tears in her eyes. "You gave us back our daughter," she whispered. "How could we ever repay you for that?" Bright Tail's fur softened into gentle blue and silver as he thought carefully about the question. "Your daughter gave us something too," he replied slowly in careful human speech. "She taught us that the universe is filled with friends we simply have not met yet." His colors warmed slightly. "That is payment enough." Later that night, Maya sat inside her room in the UN guest quarters while video calling Shimmer of Dawn and the rest of the theity back on Kepler 442c. The signal was slightly distorted because of the distance, but Maya could still clearly see their glowing crystal fur and hear the familiar music of their voices. "Tell them about the vote," Bright Tail encouraged excitedly. Maya carefully explained the Guardian Species Declaration in the theity language, her voice carrying the musical tones she had learned so well. The response from the homeworld was immediate. A chorus of amazed and grateful songs filled the room. "Shimmer of Dawn wants to know if this means the bad ones cannot hurt us anymore," Maya translated softly. "Tell her humanity will protect the theity with our lives." The deep voice came from the doorway behind them. Maya turned to see Admiral Thompson entering the room. The senior officer walked over and knelt beside her. "Maya," he said gently, "I want you to understand something. What you and Bright Tail accomplished today changed everything. The Guardian fleet will become the finest force humanity has ever assembled." He looked directly at Bright Tail. "No one will threaten the theity while we still draw breath. Your people protected one of our children." His expression hardened with absolute conviction. "Now we will protect yours. This is not merely a promise. It is a sacred oath." Bright Tail's fur blazed brilliantly with silver and gold, the colors of honor and gratitude. Later, as Maya prepared for bed, she thought about how completely her life had changed. Only a year earlier she had been an ordinary research station child, studying plants and feeding harmless alien creatures in a biology lab. Now she was an ambassador between species, and her alien family stood under the protection of the most powerful military force in human space. "Bright Tail," Maya asked quietly as the young theity settled onto the cushioned sleeping area prepared for him nearby. "Do you really think humans and the theity can stay friends forever?" Bright Tail's fur shifted gently into warm pink and gold, the colors of family love. "Small bright spirit," he replied softly, using her theity name. "Today your species proved something mine learned long ago. The strongest bonds are not built through treaties or trade agreements. They are built through love, sacrifice, and the promise to protect each other's children." Outside their window, the lights of Earth's great cities glittered like stars against the darkness. Tomorrow they would begin the journey back to Kepler 442c, where the Guardian fleet was already assembling to defend the forest world and its peaceful people. Maya fell asleep thinking about home. Not only her human home on Earth, but also her home among the forests and crystal songs of the theity. For the first time in her young life, she truly understood that home was not simply a place. Home was wherever someone loved you enough to risk everything for your safety. And now, 2 entire species had found that kind of home in each other. The Guardian Species Declaration would face many challenges in the years ahead. There would always be people who questioned humanity's decision. There would always be those who argued that protecting a species with no military or economic advantage was foolish. But on this night, as an 8-year-old ambassador slept peacefully beside her crystal-furred friend, the foundation had been laid for one of the strongest alliances in galactic history. It was an alliance born not from politics, profit, or power, but from a simple truth both species understood completely. The true measure of a civilization is how it treats those who cannot protect themselves. And by that measure, both humanity and the Theody had proven themselves worthy of the stars. 18 months passed after the Guardian Species Declaration, and the Kepler system was transformed. Where once only forests and untouched moons orbited the orange star, Guardian Station now floated in space like a massive monument of steel and crystal dedicated to interspecies friendship. Commander Janeway stood on the station's observation deck, watching human and Theody children play together inside a low-gravity recreation dome. Even after months overseeing the cultural exchange program, the sight still amazed him. Human children taught young Theody how to throw balls and play zero-gravity games, while the crystal-furred youngsters taught humans how to sing harmonies that made the air itself seem to shimmer. "It started," Maya said softly, looking out at the countless ships gathered around Guardian Station, "with someone choosing kindness instead of fear." Bright Tail's crystal fur shimmered with warm gold and silver as he joined her at the observation window. Beyond the glass, the stars seemed alive with motion. Freighters, diplomatic vessels, and military escorts from across the galaxy moved in careful patterns around the station that had become the center of a new alliance. Below them, in the Academy's central gardens, children from a dozen species played together beneath artificial sunlight. Human laughter mixed with the musical songs of the Velothi and the harmonic clicks of insectoid traders from distant systems. What had once seemed impossible had become ordinary. 3 years earlier, humanity had stood alone among the stars, suspicious of every unknown civilization. Now the Guardian Accords united species that had once feared or ignored one another. And all of it had begun because a peaceful alien family refused to abandon a frightened little girl. "You were the first bridge," Bright Tail replied. "Before Maya-chun, humans and Velothi were strangers. After Maya-chun, we became family." Maya smiled faintly. At 12 years old, she had grown taller, more confident, but she still carried the crystal pendant shimmer of dawn had given her on the day they first met. It rested against her chest now, glowing softly in the station lights. Behind them, the Academy doors opened and Dr. Elena Vasquez entered carrying a datapad full of reports. "You two are famous again," she announced with amused exhaustion. "When were we not famous?" Maya asked. Dr. Vasquez laughed. "Fair point, but this time it's important. The Galactic Council just approved the Guardian Initiative expansion." Bright Tail tilted his head curiously. "More protected worlds?" 23 requests so far, Dr. Vasquez confirmed. Minor civilizations asking for alliance status with humanity and the Velothi. Some are vulnerable species. Others simply want to join something built on trust instead of conquest. Maya looked stunned. 23. After the hegemony attack failed, Dr. Vasquez explained, a lot of species realized something important. Humanity didn't protect the Velothi because it was profitable. We protected them because it was right. Bright Tail's fur shifted into thoughtful blue patterns. "The galaxy is changing," he murmured. Truly was. The hegemony's attack on the Velothi villages had backfired catastrophically. Instead of intimidating humanity, it had united human space more completely than any war in history. The Guardian fleet had expanded into the strongest defensive alliance the galaxy had ever seen. But the greatest change had not been military. It had been moral. Across human colonies, schools taught the story of Maya and the Velothi as an example of what civilization should aspire to become. Guardian ethics courses appeared in universities. Military academies adopted new oaths centered on the protection of civilians and vulnerable species. Even rival powers had been forced to reconsider their behavior under growing political pressure. Not everyone approved. There were still corporations that hated the restrictions placed on exploitation. There were still politicians who believed humanity was wasting resources protecting weaker species. But fewer and fewer people listened to them anymore. Because every citizen in human space had seen the footage of crystal-furred aliens shielding a terrified child from armed pirates. And they remembered. An alarm chimed softly through the academy. Dr. Vasquez checked her datapad and smiled. Right on schedule. The massive observation windows darkened automatically as something enormous emerged from hyperspace beyond Guardian Station. Maya's breath caught. A fleet, but not a war fleet. Hundreds of ships appeared in formation, representing civilizations from every corner of explored space. Organic vessels grown from living coral. Metallic carriers surrounded by drone swarms. Vast crystalline structures glowing like stars. At the center flew a single ship unlike any Maya had ever seen. It looked almost alive. Its surface shimmered with silver-white crystal patterns unmistakably inspired by Velethi designs. Bright Tail stared in open shock. That ship, he whispered. Dr. Vasquez grinned. It's for you. For me. For both of you, she corrected. The Council commissioned it as the flagship of the expanded Guardian Alliance. The ship slowly rotated in space, revealing its name across the hull in both human standard and the musical written symbols of the Velethi. The Unity of Dawn. Maya felt tears sting her eyes. They named it after Shimmer of Dawn, she whispered. Bright Tail's fur exploded into brilliant gold and pink so bright the room itself seemed illuminated. She will sing about this for 10,000 generations, he said emotionally. A transmission request appeared on the main screen. Admiral Sarah Rodriguez's older face appeared, smiling proudly. Well, she said, are you two coming or not? The galaxy's waiting. Hours later, representatives from dozens of species gathered in the grand ceremonial chamber aboard the Unity of Dawn. Human officers stood beside Velethi elders. Former enemies stood beside old rivals. The air hummed with anticipation. At the center of the chamber stood Maya and Brighttail, not as children anymore, not simply as survivors, but as symbols of an idea powerful enough to reshape civilizations. Secretary General Amara Okafor addressed the assembly from the central podium. History once taught us that strength came from conquest, she began. That survival depended on dominance. That fear was inevitable between different peoples. She looked toward Maya and Brighttail. Then a frightened child met a species that chose compassion over fear. The chamber remained utterly silent. The Velethi protected one human life because they believed all children deserved safety, Okafor continued. Humanity answered that kindness with a promise, that those who protect the innocent would never stand alone. She raised her voice slightly. Today, the Guardian Alliance formally begins. Applause thundered through the chamber. Not polite applause, not political applause, but something deeper. Hope. Brighttail stepped forward next. His voice carried musical harmonies now so refined that translators struggled to capture their emotional depth. My people once believed the stars were lonely places, he said. We feared what lived beyond them. His crystal fur shifted through waves of silver, blue, and gold. Then one small bright spirit fell from the sky into our forest. Maya laughed softly through her tears. Brighttail continued. She taught us that strangers can become family, that kindness can survive fear, that love given freely returns stronger than before. He looked around the chamber at the gathered species. The strongest force in the galaxy is not war fleets or weapons. His gaze found Maya's. It is the courage to protect someone who cannot protect themselves. For a long moment nobody spoke. Then slowly, throughout the chamber, delegates from dozens of worlds rose to their feet, one by one, until the entire hall stood together. Human, Velethi, alien, former enemies, all united by a truth simple enough for a child to understand. Civilizations are not judged by power. They are judged by mercy. And somewhere far below, on a peaceful forest world orbiting an orange star, Shimmer of Dawn lifted her voice in song, while Velethi children listened beneath glowing crystal trees. The song told of a lost little girl, of courage, a family found among strangers, and of the day the galaxy learned that kindness could become stronger than fear. Maya corrected with a smile. It started with your people choosing to help a scared little girl, even though they had every reason to be afraid of humans. Bright tails first shifted to warm gold, the color of happy memories. And now look what has grown from that one act of kindness. Below them, the Velothi homeworld turned slowly in space, its forests now protected by the most powerful defense network in the galaxy. But the protection extended far beyond military might. The planet had become a symbol of hope for peaceful species throughout the galaxy, proof that the strong could choose to protect the weak rather than exploit them. Maya Brighttail called Dr. Elena Vasquez as she approached from the Academy's main corridor. Now in her 50s, she had become the director of the Interspecies Cultural Exchange Program and looked younger than her years, energized by the work she loved. The Hegemony delegation has arrived. Are you ready for the meeting? Maya felt a familiar flutter of nervousness. The Hegemony had requested this meeting, claiming they wanted to discuss new terms of engagement in the region. After their defeat 2 years ago, they had largely avoided human-protected space, but recent intelligence suggested they were planning something significant. Any word on what they actually want? Maya asked as they walked toward the main conference chamber. Admiral Thompson thinks they are testing the waters for some kind of treaty, Dr. Vasquez replied. The defeat at Velothi really shook their confidence. Losing face in front of the entire galaxy is not something the Hegemony takes lightly. The conference chamber was a marvel of interspecies cooperation. The room had been designed to accommodate beings of vastly different sizes, environments, and sensory needs. Atmospheric zones could be adjusted for different breathing requirements. Gravity fields could be modified, and translation systems provided real-time communication in over 300 languages. Already seated around the massive circular table were representatives from the Alliance of Protected Worlds, as the growing coalition had come to be known. The Althari Collective's ambassador, a graceful being that looked like a living tree with silver leaves, rustled softly in what Maya had learned was their equivalent of a greeting. The Harmony Singers, crystalline beings similar to the Velothi, but from a different evolutionary path, chimed soft musical notes of welcome. Admiral Thompson entered with the human delegation, his expression carefully neutral. The years since the Velothi incident had transformed him from a career military officer into one of the galaxy's most respected peacekeepers. His presence alone was often enough to deter aggression. Before the Hegemony delegation arrives, Admiral Thompson said, taking his seat, I want everyone to understand the stakes. Our intelligence suggests that they are facing internal pressure from their own people. The defeat here showed other hegemony species that their military is not invincible. Several member worlds are questioning their continued membership. Bright tails first shifted to deep blue, the color of serious thought. Do they come seeking peace? Or is this another test with the hegemony? It is always both, Admiral Thompson replied grimly. The chamber's main doors opened and the hegemony delegation entered. Leading them was Admiral Krell, the same commander who had ordered the attack on the Velothi village 2 years ago. His face showed no emotion, but Maya could sense the tension in his posture. Behind Krell came representatives from several hegemony member species, including some Maya recognized from intelligence briefings. The diversity was striking. The hegemony ruled through force rather than cooperation, but they were still a coalition of different worlds and peoples. Admiral Thompson, Krell said as he took his seat across the table, thank you for agreeing to this meeting. The Hegemony Council has authorized me to discuss new arrangements for this sector. Admiral Krell, Thompson replied evenly, we are always willing to discuss peace, but let me be clear, the protection of our allied species is not negotiable. Krell's eyes swept around the table, taking in the assembled representatives. When his gaze fell on Maya and Bright Tail, his expression hardened slightly. Ah yes, the famous child ambassador and her pet alien, he said with barely concealed disdain. Still playing at diplomacy, I see. Maya felt anger flare in her chest, but Bright Tail's gentle touch on her arm calmed her. His fur showed steady silver and gold, the colors of patience and wisdom. Admiral Krell, Maya said calmly, Bright Tail is not my pet. He is my partner, my friend, and one of the wisest beings I have ever known. Your inability to see that says more about you than it does about him. Several of the hegemony delegates shifted uncomfortably at her direct response. Krell's face flushed with anger, but before he could respond, another voice spoke from the delegation. The young ambassador speaks truly, said a being Maya had not expected to see. It was a Velothi she did not recognize. The crystalline fur was darker than any she had seen before, with patterns that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. I am Shadow of Sorrow, the dark Velothi continued in the musical language of his people, which the translation system rendered into standard galactic speech. I represent those who chose a different path than those who protected the human child. Maya and Brighttail stared in shock. They had never heard of any Velothi leaving their homeworld, much less joining the hegemony. You are, Brighttail said in their native language, his fur showing confused patterns of blue and gray. How can you serve those who attacked our people? Shadow of Sorrow's dark fur shifted in patterns Maya had never seen before. Because I learned that kindness is weakness, young cousin. The humans you trust so much will abandon you the moment it becomes inconvenient. Better to serve strength than to trust in false promises. The chamber fell silent as the implications of his words sank in. The hegemony had not just come to negotiate. They had come to drive a wedge between the alliance by showing that even the Velothi could be turned against their human protectors. How many? Admiral Thompson asked quietly. Several hundred, Krell replied with satisfaction. It seems not all share the naive trust your species places in humanity. Some understand the true nature of galactic politics. Maya felt her heart breaking. The idea that any Velothi could turn against their own people, against the alliance that had grown from their act of kindness, was almost too painful to bear. But then Brighttail did something unexpected. He began to sing. It was not the gentle harmony Maya was used to. This was the deep, complex song that Velothi elders used for the most serious occasions. His crystalline fur blazed with silver and gold, as his voice filled the chamber with haunting melodies that seemed to reach into everyone's souls. When the song ended, Shadow of Sorrow's dark fur showed flickers of other colors, brief touches of silver and blue that he quickly suppressed. What did you sing? Maya asked softly. The Song of the Lost Pod, Brighttail replied, his voice heavy with sadness. It is sung for family members who have forgotten who they are. It reminds them there is always a path home. Shadow of Sorrow stood abruptly, his dark fur now showing clear patterns of conflict and pain. Your songs cannot change reality, cousin. The hegemony offers protection based on strength. Humanity offers protection based on sentiment. Which do you think will last longer? Before anyone could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Admiral Thompson's communication device crackled to life. Admiral, we have multiple hyperspace signatures incoming. It is a big one. The largest hegemony fleet we have ever detected. Krell smiled coldly. Ah, it seems the rest of our delegation has arrived. 57 ships, Admiral Thompson. The largest battle fleet the hegemony has assembled in recent years. We thought it was time to settle the question of who really controls this sector. Maya felt fear grip her heart, but Admiral Thompson's expression remained calm. Admiral Krell, you are making a serious mistake, Thompson said quietly. This station is home to representatives from over 30 species. An attack here would be an act of war against the entire alliance. The alliance? Krell laughed. A collection of weak species hiding behind human protection. When your guardian fleet is destroyed, they will quickly remember the wisdom of serving the strong. But as the hegemony fleet took position around the system, something unexpected happened. Ships began dropping out of hyperspace from every direction. Not human ships, but vessels from every member of the Alliance of Protected Worlds. The Altari Collective's bioships, grown rather than built, moved with organic grace as they formed defensive formations. The crystal ships of the Harmony Singers chimed with frequencies that disrupted enemy targeting systems. Even the peaceful agricultural worlds had sent what ships they could spare. You seem to have miscalculated, Admiral Krell, Thompson said as the tactical display showed over 200 Allied vessels taking defensive positions. The Alliance is not a collection of weak species hiding behind human protection. It is a family that protects each other. Maya watched in amazement as species that had never fought before coordinated their efforts with the precision of lifelong allies. The Velothi might not have warships, but their crystal technology enhanced the sensors and communications of every allied vessel. The Althari bioships regenerated damage that would cripple traditional craft. The Harmony Singer's frequency weapons disabled electronics without harming organic life. "This changes nothing," Krell said. But Maya could hear uncertainty in his voice. "The hegemony fleet is still superior in pure firepower." "Perhaps," Admiral Thompson replied, "but they are fighting for conquest. We are fighting for family." The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. It was not just humans defending the Velothi, but dozens of species fighting together to protect the principles that had brought them together. Maya and Brighttail watched from the Academy's command center as the engagement unfolded. The hegemony fleet was powerful, but they had not expected such unified resistance. Their tactics were designed for intimidating individual worlds, not fighting a coordinated alliance. The turning point came when Admiral Thompson made a decision that military historians would debate for generations. Instead of focusing on destroying the hegemony fleet, he ordered his ships to target engines and weapons, attempting to disable rather than destroy. "Admiral," his tactical officer protested, "we could end this faster with full-power attacks." "No," Thompson replied firmly. "We are not here to prove we can kill more efficiently than they can. We are here to prove there is a better way." The strategy worked. Faced with an enemy clearly capable of destroying them but choosing restraint instead, many hegemony ships began to surrender rather than fight to the death. The psychological impact was devastating. The hegemony's entire philosophy was based on the belief that strength meant willingness to use overwhelming force. When Krell's flagship was finally disabled, the remaining hegemony ships found themselves surrounded but not destroyed. Thompson opened communications with the entire enemy fleet. "Hegemony forces, this is Admiral Thompson. Your fleet is defeated, but you are not destroyed. That was a choice we made. You came here believing strength means the willingness to kill. We have shown you that true strength means the wisdom to protect." The response came not from Krell, but from another commander. "Admiral Thompson, this is Commander Vex of the 2nd Squadron. We did not expect such restraint from an enemy with clear tactical superiority. Why do you not finish us?" Thompson's reply was broadcast throughout the system, reaching not just the defeated fleet, but every ship in the Alliance. "Because, Commander Vex, we remember what brought us all here. A little girl was saved by beings who had every reason to fear her species, but chose kindness instead. They taught us that the measure of a civilization is not how efficiently it can destroy its enemies, but how wisely it can turn enemies into friends." In the Interspecies Academy's command center, Maya felt tears streaming down her face. Shadow of Sorrow, the dark Velothi who had joined the hegemony, stared at the tactical display with his fur showing patterns of amazement and confusion. "I do not understand," he said in the musical Velothi language. "The humans have won completely. Why do they not take revenge for the attack on our villages?" Brighttail's response was gentle but firm. "Because that is not who they are, lost cousin. They learned from us what we learned from our ancestors, that the cycle of violence only ends when someone chooses to be stronger than their anger." Over the following days, the aftermath of the battle sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. The hegemony's crushing defeat had not come from superior weapons or tactics, but from a fundamental difference in philosophy. Species across the galaxy began to question whether rule through fear was really the most effective form of government. The most significant moment came when Commander Vex formally requested asylum for his entire squadron. 47 ships and over 10,000 personnel chose to defect from the hegemony rather than return to a system based on oppression. "Why?" Maya asked Vex during his debriefing. "You were loyal to the hegemony for over 20 years. What changed?" The grizzled commander, a reptilian being from a world conquered decades earlier, considered his words carefully. "Young ambassador, I have spent my career believing that fear and strength were the same thing. Today I learned the difference. Your Admiral Thompson had the power to destroy my fleet completely, but he chose mercy instead. That is a kind of strength I never knew existed. He paused, looking out at the homeworld visible through the station's windows. My own people were conquered by the hegemony when I was your age. I told myself that serving them was the only way to protect my family. But watching how the Alliance fought today, I realized I had been protecting them from the wrong enemy. The real enemy was not external threats, but the system that made me believe I had no choice but to serve oppression. Word of the hegemony's defeat and the mass defections reached every corner of the galaxy within days. On dozens of worlds, peaceful species began to organize and resist their oppressors. The Alliance of Protected Worlds received hundreds of requests for membership from civilizations that had previously been too afraid to stand up for themselves. But the most important change came from within the hegemony itself. Shadow of Sorrow approached Maya and Brighttail 3 days after the battle. His dark crystal fur now showed clear patterns of silver and blue. "Lost cousin," Brighttail said gently, using the formal Velethy greeting for family members who had been separated. "You seem troubled. I have been thinking about the song of the lost pod that you sang." Shadow of Sorrow replied, his musical voice carrying notes of uncertainty and hope. "I told myself I joined the hegemony to be realistic about galactic politics. But watching the battle, seeing how the Alliance fought together to protect each other, I think perhaps I was the one who did not understand reality." Maya stepped forward, her young face showing compassion beyond her years. "What reality is that? That kindness is not weakness," Shadow of Sorrow said, his fur now blazing with silver and gold. "That protection does not require domination. That a family built on love is stronger than an empire built on fear." He paused, looking directly at Maya. "You were just a frightened child when my cousins found you in the forest. But you taught them something that changed the galaxy. You taught them that strangers can become family. That differences in species do not matter if hearts are pure." "The Velethy taught me that," Maya replied softly. "I was just scared and lost. They were the ones who chose to help. And now their choice has given hope to billions across the galaxy." Shadow of Sorrow nodded. "Worlds that thought they had no choice but to accept oppression now know there is another way. Species that thought they were too weak to stand up for themselves have learned they do not have to stand alone." 6 months later, Maya stood in the same observation deck where her journey had begun. But the view was dramatically different. Orbital space around the homeworld was filled with ships from over 100 species, all members of the Alliance of Protected Worlds. The Academy had expanded to accommodate students from dozens of civilizations, all learning the principles that had started with one small act of kindness in a forest clearing. Human children played alongside young Velethy, Altari saplings, Harmony Singer juveniles, and many others. "Look at what has grown from your decision to help a lost child," Maya said to Shimmer of Dawn, who had come to visit the Academy for the first time. The ancient Velethy elder looked out at the bustling station with fur glowing in quiet contentment. "Small bright spirit," she said softly. "When we found you crying in our forest, we could not have imagined this. We only knew you needed help, and helping you was the right thing to do. But it was more than that," Maya replied. "You showed the galaxy that there was a different way to live, that the strong could protect the weak instead of exploiting them, that kindness could be strength instead of vulnerability." Brighttail approached with a group of young beings from various species, the first graduating class of the Interspecies Academy. "Brighttail," Maya said, "the Council has made a decision about the Kresh Empire's request," he said. The Kresh Empire, once one of the galaxy's most aggressive militaristic powers, had requested Alliance protection after civil war broke out on their homeworld. What did they decide? "The Alliance will send peacekeeping forces to help stabilize the Kresh homeworld," Brighttail replied, "but only if they agree to adopt Alliance principles. Protection of civilians, respect for all sentient life, and the commitment to use strength in service of justice rather than conquest." Maya smiled. "And if they refuse? Then they will face their civil war alone," Shimmer of Dawn said simply. "The Alliance does not force its values on others, but it does not help those who refuse to abandon the ways that create suffering." As evening fell over the homeworld, Maya joined the daily ceremony at the academy. Students and faculty from dozens of species gathered in the main hall, where the Song of Remembrance was sung in the Velethi language. It told the story of a lost human child and 6 crystal-furred beings who chose kindness over fear. But tonight, something changed. Shadow of Sorrow stepped forward and added a new verse, the first edition in over a year. His voice, now clear and bright, sang of redemption and return, of those who lost their way and still found a path home. When the ceremony ended, Maya stood again on the observation deck, joined by Bright Tail and young representatives from over 30 species. "Do you think we have really changed anything?" asked Kathra, a young Althari. Maya looked out at the stars, at alliance ships patrolling trade routes, diplomatic missions preventing wars, refugee vessels carrying survivors to safety. "I think," she said carefully, "we have proven that change is possible. We have shown there is an alternative to the old ways. Whether the galaxy follows it, that is up to everyone else." Bright Tail's fur shifted to the warm gold and pink that meant family love as he looked around at the assembled young beings. "But we have also created something that cannot be destroyed," he added. "We have created a generation that knows it is possible for different species to live as family. Whatever challenges come next, they will face them with that knowledge." As the young ambassadors dispersed to their quarters, Maya remained on the observation deck with Bright Tail and Shimmer of Dawn. Tomorrow, she would begin her final year at the academy before taking on full diplomatic responsibilities. There were rumors of new threats emerging in distant sectors, species that had not yet learned the lessons of the Alliance. "Are you ready for what comes next?" Shimmer of Dawn asked in the gentle voice that had comforted Maya through so many difficult moments. Maya thought about everything that had happened since the day in the forest when she was 7 years old. She thought about the friends she had made, the species she had helped bring together, and the conflicts she had helped resolve. "I do not know if anyone can ever be ready for the future," she replied honestly. "But I know that whatever comes, we will face it together. That is what family does." Bright Tail's fur blazed with silver and gold as he added his own thoughts. "The galaxy is large and full of beings who have not yet learned that kindness is strength. But every day more species join the Alliance. Every day more children grow up knowing that differences in biology do not matter if hearts are pure. The song that began in our forest is spreading to every corner of the galaxy." As they stood together looking out at the stars, Maya realized that her story was really just beginning. The little girl who had been saved by crystal-furred forest dwellers had become a bridge between worlds. But there were still countless worlds that needed bridges. The Alliance of Protected Worlds had grown from a simple act of kindness into the largest peaceful coalition in galactic history. But more importantly, it had proven that there was an alternative to the cycles of conquest and oppression that had dominated galactic politics for millennia. The hegemony still existed, weakened, but not destroyed. There were still pirates and slavers, still species that believed might made right. But now there was also proof that another way was possible. There was an example of what could be achieved when the strong chose to protect the weak, when different species chose to see each other as family rather than competitors. Maya fell asleep that night to the sound of Bright Tail's gentle breathing and the distant songs of the forest. But now those songs were joined by the harmonies of dozens of other species, all adding their voices to the growing chorus of hope that had begun with 6 beings choosing to help a lost child. The galaxy was still vast and dangerous, still full of conflicts and challenges. But it was also full of friends who had not yet met, families waiting to be formed, and children of all species who would grow up knowing that the universe was a place where kindness could triumph over cruelty. And in a small way, it had all started because a frightened little human girl had run into a forest, and the beings who found her had chosen love over fear. The Alliance of Protected Worlds continued to grow, one act of kindness at a time, proving that the smallest gestures could change the destiny of entire civilizations. Maya Chun and Bright Tail had become symbols of that change. But they knew they were just the beginning. The real heroes were every being who chose to help instead of harm, who chose to protect instead of exploit, who chose to build bridges instead of walls. They were the ones who would carry the story forward.